You are listening to Chai with the CEO, a Random Genius Media original.
Welcome, Maura, to Chai with the CEO.
Yes.
Um, Thank you for joining us on this, little tete-a-tete. I
Mm-hmm.
want to sort of, um, punctuate this conversation with the fact that, you coming on board has actually taken this little humble podcast of ours global, right? Because you're talking to us from New York. We're in,
Mm-hmm.
four bungalows, Andheri, Mumbai, which is a little suburb in Bombay, India. And
Mm-hmm.
deeply appreciative that you've taken the time to speak with us. And I'm going to try not to shake my head too much and scratch my face. So
Not
that's
to
that's
worry.
a little internal joke with my producers. So Maura, let's get started. I just want to also, inform people that as much as this is for entertainment, it's also a learning resource
Mm-hmm.
for students, for professionals in the licensing business. So we try and talk to different sort of thought leaders
Mm-hmm.
to get their perspectives and help folks who might be looking at different career opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
understand the inner workings, if you will, what
Mm-hmm.
goes on behind the scenes, and make a more informed choice, right?
Yeah.
So I
Um,
have a few questions that I'm going to throw at you, and feel free to um, answer, pass, whatever you are. So it's a free flowing chat, right?
okay.
Okay, let's get
Good.
to it. So you recently wound up with the Licensing Expo 2025.
Yeah.
Give us some cliff notes. What were some of the trends that piqued your interest? What's exciting in the licensing space?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for extending an invitation to join you in this conversation. We've gone back years, and it's always a pleasure when I get to really catch up with you more than just a passing hello, how are you, text or WhatsApp. So this is really nice to have a conversation that has full sentences and that we can really talk about the business of our business, which we both love. So I'm
Yes.
very happy to be here. And, I have a personal passion. Um, for India as a market, as well as just from a just historical and artistic perspective. I just have a lot of passion for the market over the years, and I'm pleased to be here. So thank you for extending the invitation.
Most
So
welcome.
on to the business of the business. So Expo was fantastic. Las Vegas Expo 2025. We are looking at final numbers. We don't have everything, all the I's dotted and the T's crossed as yet, but all of the numbers, the aggregate numbers are showing us that we were ahead of 2019. So we're at pre-pandemic levels, which
Wow.
is terrific. And I think, all of us in the industry have worked super hard to get back to this place in terms of our businesses, personally as well as professionally, to get back to this place. And I mean, there's still some markets that are in terms of attending the expo, aren't necessarily there in the same droves that they were, but it's being made up from other markets as well. So overall, the mood was very positive. Now, going into this, frankly, I thought that the discussion around tariffs might in fact sort of take all the oxygen out of the room, but it was really interesting. And I think it speaks to just the resilience of our industry, is that it was, people sort of, there was, day one, we had a presentation on tariffs, which was very informative and useful from like how to manage. But after that, it was just, okay, how do we, business forward? How are we moving our businesses forward? What do we need to do? How are we collaborating? So the mood was extremely positive, very, very positive, and it just demonstrates the resilience. We also published our headline news, which is that the industry showed growth year over year, despite, again, a lot of macroeconomic trends that none of us in our day-to-day business lives have any control over it. Things like supply chain issues, the price of cotton, inflation, tariffs, geopolitical issues, all of that weighs on our industry, as you know firsthand. But despite all of that, the industry remains vibrant, resilient, entrepreneurial and forward looking.
Great. That is such a succinct um, overview of what happened. You've always been good with words, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, and I've done a very poor job of introducing you properly, and I apologize. Maura and I worked together when I was blogging for Licensing International back in 2018, just before the pandemic struck.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed working with the team in New York. In fact, I wrote down some names that I want to shout out to: Marty, Gisela, Steve,
Mhm.
Sharon, Deirdre. I know everyone's in different places doing different things, but
Mhm.
it was a pleasure working with you guys. I
Oh,
learned so
good,
much.
good.
I learned so much about the licensing business, and it might seem very, you know, ominous or onerous, but when you get into it, and Jiggy, credit to Jiggy, he gave me a very simple explanation, and he said,
Mhm.
Shell, licensing is about brands, right? And as long as you
Mhm.
understand that, you kind of get the gist. And if you love brands, you love licensing.
Excuse me, yes.
Um, so, which
Excuse me.
um, God bless. Which
Thank you.
segues to the next question that I had was, just rewinding the clock a little, around 2018, around the time I was there, Lima transitioned to Licensing International, right? You must have faced some resistance because obviously historical 30 years, and organizations
Yeah,
that's been around for
yeah.
30 years had, deep roots in the licensing community. Did you face any resistance? What kind of life lessons did you learn from that
Sure,
experience?
it's a great question. I mean, it's interesting. We are, as Jiggy said, it's really all about brands. And, when we went into this process, it wasn't about changing the name, actually. What we did was we were really looking to refresh and revitalize um, the the visual identity of the organization to really meet where the industry was going. And that was really my brief and my decision. In order for me to really come on board, one of the things that I was most interested in doing is helping to sort of rewire the organization and meet the industry where it is as an association advancing the industry. So I felt very passionate about that. And um, I'd been here for a bit when we undertook this a brand refresh or rebranding. And we didn't go into it, Sheldon, saying we're going to change the name. And what we started with, and again, it's typical if you're doing any kind of a brand refresh or any kind of an upgrade or a rethink, you do a lot of discovery and you really want to hear from your constituents. You also want to look at the competitive landscape and see what other organizations, how they're presenting themselves, how they talk about themselves. And so coming out of that discovery phase was there were a few things. One, there was this inherent um, not misunderstanding, but lack of clarity around what Lima really stood for. And,
Right.
a naming device has to really do the heavy lifting for any kind of a product or an organization. That's really, the headline. And from a search perspective, Lima was never going to be at the top, obviously, because you've got Peru, you've got
Peru.
beans. I mean, there's all these other things. So from a search, and again, knowing how things are heading, you want to make sure that you really rise to the top. And so those are the kinds of things that were coming out. And as an international or global organization, it really wasn't articulated in Lima at all. And being an American sitting in an office in New York, it was just like, this doesn't really represent who we are. And in fact, I was at a class, and there was a student I was doing a teaching, a day class for somebody who was from Peru, and he said, I don't understand, like, why are you calling it Lima? And it was, so it was those kinds of things. But ultimately, it was really through feedback from the industry and setting a understanding about the competitive set. We worked with an outside agency. I should back up, and the process was that we sent out requests for proposals, RFPs, to
RFPs.
a number of agencies, branding agencies, and we had a committee and we reviewed them, and we decided on a path forward. We worked very closely with this agency. We presented to the board on an ongoing basis. And certainly when the naming came up, we did the usual, we did a search, we did all this kind of stuff, because that was really, so what do you call ourselves? So I wouldn't say that there was resistance. There were some folks who said, why do we need to change the name? But again, we're in the business of brands and branding and connecting with consumers. So that was really the game changer for folks. So we got over that. It wasn't that painful. I mean, people will still call Lima, listen, there's there's a huge building in New York that's been the MetLife building for probably 30 years. People still call it the Pan Am building or the
Correct.
Time Warner building. So those things
Or
happen.
Twitter for that matter, right? I mean, it's X now, but people will still call it Twitter. So
Exactly. It's really, it's really, I don't think, it's not that big of a deal. And ultimately, and we're actually interested in going through an upgrade right now, another refresh after 5 years. You
wow.
need to refresh and update your website, and we're not doing a name change. But one of the things that I do think that hindsight's always 2020 is when we were going through that process and we landed on Licensing International. We obviously did the search and all that kind of stuff to make sure it wasn't owned by anybody else. One of the things, again, 5 years later, and as the world has evolved around brands and licensing, we probably should have maybe done a little bit different with the naming. So now we qualify Licensing International because we are connecting, creating brand partnerships. Because ultimately, whether it's a sponsorship, NIL, which is name, image, likeness, which is huge now in the US in the sports arena, but on a global basis, name, image, likeness is a huge, huge opportunity. And in fact, it's all predicated on licensing, the fundamentals of licensing. So sometimes licensing gets lost a little bit because people don't really understand what licensing is. Is it something that's technical? Is it legal? It's all of those things, but ultimately it's about connecting brands with consumers through the use of intellectual property. So, and so whether, again, sponsorship, advertising, on-air advertising oftentimes is all fundamentally licensing. So lots of lessons learned.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Great to know. Of course, the final product was amazing. Very, very contemporary. We got a lot of good feedback from
Good,
partners in
thank you.
India.
Yeah.
And that was an exciting phase to be a part of that journey, right? I enjoyed it and loved it.
We appreciate it. You did great work for us. We really,
Which
really
is
appreciate
yeah,
it.
which is why the one sentence catch ups on LinkedIn, because friends once made are very tough to sort of leave behind, and I like to keep in touch. I mean, and LinkedIn is my gold mine. I've
That's
got
good.
friends going back all the way to Cartoon Network and even before that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's amazing. So talking about technology, right? Do you think AI is playing a bigger role in licensing these days, and will it enhance licensing, or is it a threat to licensing? What is your opinion, or what are the partners
Yeah.
also saying?
Yeah, I don't think there's a binary answer to that. It's good or
Sure,
it's bad. I don't think it's a tool.
it's a
And I think, yes, it is being used in our industry, as it is with every industry. I mean, we all have been using AI personally for gazillions of years, right? Whether you use spell check, whether you use some kind of a, Google Maps or anything like that to help you navigate, all of that is driven by AI. So
true.
it's been here, it's been used for a long time. And I think what's been interesting is to see within the industry how it is helping to accelerate. Now, it's not to take away from the fact that it is a technology that is not, we don't know how far it can go. And so with uncertainty always comes stress, and people sometimes want to pull back. But within our industry, if you think about, pitch documents and things like that, again, it wouldn't be for the final product necessarily, but it does create an opportunity to jumpstart the process. And so
Yes,
folks that I've talked to oftentimes it'll help things sort of move along.
move along.
That's on one side of it. I think also from a product development, I was just talking about this the other day with some folks. I've been around a long time. I remember back in the day when, from a product development perspective, we would require pencil sketches, and you go from a pencil sketch, and then and things would get blue lined. All of that is accelerated because of AI, and we learned this during the pandemic that as much as it was, I think, so useful to be able to get on a plane, fly to Hong Kong, sit with someone who's sculpting to make those tweaks in real time. You can now do that through 3D imaging driven by AI. So there's so much there. But again, it has to be used with oversight. It has to be used with an understanding of right ownership of underlying rights, who owns what. I think it's not necessarily something, I know folks, and obviously, as you know, coming from production house, effectively Sesame Street, it is something that's kind of scary for content creators. Will this take away their jobs? But again, I think the reality is that we all thought that we would be living in a paperless world, and computers would be all the answers, and we would have these 4-day work weeks and long weekends, and in fact we're working harder than ever.
Working harder. True.
So I don't think, for better or worse, that AI is going to do away with jobs. I think it will, again, like a technology, it will accelerate things. You think about technology and the Industrial Revolution worldwide, about how things advance through technology, through new machines. Again, factories in China, from when I first started and was visiting factories in China or factories in India, and you think about something as, like embroidery in apparel and how that's advanced because of the technology. And yes, jobs were lost because of that, but it's those individuals are moving into other kinds of jobs. So
True.
that's a very long-winded answer. Sorry about that.
No, it's great. Like I said, the primary objective is learning, right? I mean, and don't worry
Yeah.
about long-winded answers. I guess, I'm hoping our viewers will really lap it up, right?
Mhm.
Coming straight from HQ, licensing international HQ.
Mhm.
Which brings me to my next question, right? I mean, almost 50% of the licensing business, right, is accumulated or centered out of the US.
Mhm.
Of course, we know, copyright laws are, very stringent and stuff like that in the US, but would you be able to shed some more light on why licensing hasn't um, mushroomed or not mushroomed, I would say matured in other markets to a greater degree? Or, what's your opinion on that?
I think well, Americans love to consume. We love our stuff. We love buying stuff. And we love brands. And
Yeah.
I think it's more just, I don't think it's that there's not that opportunity in these other markets. I think the infrastructure doesn't necessarily support, you know, um, distribution of brands,
Yes.
price points of brands. I think there are other issues. It's not about consumer behavior. I think the consumers are there,
Hmm.
and consumers worldwide, we see and we know that, brands that are, centered around whether it's music or sports or lifestyle, entertainment, those industries resonate with consumers on a worldwide basis. And I think what is challenging to meet those consumers where they are through branded licensed products is sort of almost like a math problem. It's an operations issue where what's the distribution, what are the price points in order for being accessible and affordable. And I think that's really the roadblock more than anything else.
Correct, correct. Just a personal observation is that over the last year, there have been music concerts that have sort of come back to India with a vengeance,
Mhm.
starting with
Hopefully.
Lollapalooza, and then we had recently had, Ed Sheeran Guns N' Roses just
Mhm.
performed. Uh,
Yeah,
um, and merchandise sales have gone through the roof. At least
yeah.
you see a lot more people buying,
Mhm.
original authorized merchandise,
Mhm.
which is heartening, right? Yes, price points make a big difference because, and I'll be honest and I'll be candid, I'm a parent now, I have two kids. I have a threshold, right?
Yeah,
Son wants to buy five shirts at a concert. That's not going to happen.
yeah.
Pick one, pick two max, right? So I, at the same time, while I have one foot in the business, and I
Mhm.
know that, from that perspective, I'd love to support the industry, but I'm
Mhm.
like, I have my wallet to look at as well, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And
So
yeah,
yeah, sorry, you were saying.
no, no, that's completely, and I think that's a very universal sentiment.
Because when you go to an event, you go to because experiential events, I think, have proven to be the future of brand
Hmm.
licensing, right? I mean, people don't only buy stuff; they want to experience, and then the
Hmm.
merchandise serves as like
Hmm.
a little bit of a keepsake to
Yeah.
remember I mean, Coldplay came down. It was the biggest
Hmm.
concert in India ever, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they played at the Narendra Modi Stadium. And in fact, it was so big. Um, that's a whole other conversation. I mean, just the way the tickets were sort of awarded. There, it was
Hmm.
the lottery system. We spent
Oh,
an
wow.
entire day trying to get tickets. The
Hmm.
joke that was going around was, did you get tickets? No. How long did you try? Right? And that's not to say that, of course, there was the fun in trying to get tickets. We managed to get
Hmm.
tickets thanks to my brother-in-law who was working on the event. And,
Hmm.
finally all ended well in our family because my
Hmm.
son is a huge Coldplay fan, and I'm very proud of the fact. But when you pay for four tickets to go to a concert, it kind of hits you. And then buy merchandise and food at the venue. And, obviously we don't serve alcohol here, but we do
Hmm.
serve alcohol, but we kind of stay away from that aspect. But you're right, infrastructure needs to catch up because a lot of stuff you do feel left wanting. I mean, I had an
Hmm.
experience at the Brian Adams concert where there was not enough infrastructure to basic loos, right? I mean, toilets were not enough,
Hmm.
and that's something else. But infrastructure, I would just put it down to the fact that infrastructure needs to improve because when you're paying top dollar, we
Hmm.
pay the same amount that somebody would pay in the US to go for a concert.
Hmm.
You would
Yeah,
expect that kind of a experience, a global experience,
exactly.
and
Exactly.
so do the artists, right? I mean, they don't want their
Absolutely.
fans being shortchanged. So
Yeah.
just drawing on what you spoke about, I think I can reference it to what's happening in the music space. Uh,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
things are getting better, at least in India, for sure.
Hmm.
We have bigger stadiums. We have better. I mean, there were 150,000 people at the venue for the Coldplay concert in Ahmedabad, and
That's
everything
awesome.
was managed to the hilt.
Hmm.
There was no stampede. There was no, everyone sort of got in at on time, left peacefully. There were no accidents. So that's great. I mean, it gives us hope, and of course, people in the business, that we can think bigger, think broader.
Hmm. Yeah.
And of course, the whole event was televised was streamed live on Hotstar,
Hmm.
which is now
Oh,
Geo
wonderful.
Hotstar.
That's great.
Yeah, so they actually got an audience of over, I think, a million or so, million plus
Wow.
viewers. I might be wrong on the stats, but way more. So it kind of exploded. You know what was happening
Hmm. Hmm.
during the lockdown, where
Hmm.
you had some of the artists performing from their bedroom and then
Hmm. Yeah.
technology taking over and really
Hmm.
getting it to the fans. Like um, one of the artists, the hip hop artist, actually performed from his bedroom and he had 8 stadiums worth of an audience tune in,
Wow.
right? So I can't really get the name, but it's age catching up. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but you understand what I'm saying, right? So
Oh, absolutely.
that's just the tip of the iceberg. And
Yeah.
we are very, very positive that it's going to grow from here. So,
Mhm.
definitely, I think better times ahead, and that's
Mhm.
great for licensing as a whole and the constituents in particular.
Mhm.
Which brings me to the next question. You touched upon it a little bit, but how will trade tariffs affect, the licensing business, especially given the reciprocatory nature, which doesn't augur well for business, right? I mean, the tit for tat approach that raise
Yeah.
tariffs on me and I'll raise tariffs on you, and
Yeah, that never ends well.
it
Yeah.
never ends well. Yes. So, what's your perspective on that?
Well, I think we're all watching, and I think that ultimately, um, again, this is an industry that is hugely resilient. It's also an industry that's not predicated on a zero-sum game model, which is I win, you lose. It's really about how do we win together, because that's the most success that all parties enjoy. And so it's just got to be constant communication for all partners, for retailers and licensees and licensors, to really be in constant communication about how to navigate this next normal that we're seeing. I do know that it is untenable at these levels for many, many companies, and that is, that does worry me on a number of levels. Obviously from a business perspective, but also, these are people's livelihoods and
Correct.
their businesses, and they've built these businesses successfully.
Correct.
And it just, we are all margin sensitive, and
Correct.
there's not a whole lot of give. And to put something like this on can really and will put some folks out of business. So, that is very, very difficult to sort of acknowledge and accept. But it does, I do think that it is something that some companies will not survive. But again, coming out of the show, a lot of resilience in the industry. I also think that, as an industry, everyone I know for years has been looking and is always looking for new places to manufacture as well as to sell goods. So again, this is an industry that's very dynamic. It's never sitting still. Again, it's following consumer patterns, consumer behavior patterns, and understanding the sensitivity around pricing. So again, so many companies, they do business in China, they do business in Vietnam, they do business in India in terms of manufacturing, as well as obviously distribution and selling to consumers. But from a business perspective, we are a global industry. We manufacture and distribute really everywhere. And that's not going to change.
True. I like how you've put communication at the core of the solution, because I think,
Yeah.
one of the clients that I deal with, um, happens to also be in New York, talked about over communication, and her message to me was don't worry about over communicating, right?
Mhm.
Because sometimes with distances can create misunderstandings, and I think
Yes.
that could be one of the solutions. Just and another client that I have says, forget email messages, just pick up the phone and talk to me, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, and we learned this during the pandemic, right? And certainly through the global financial crisis in 2008, GFC. And I think what I said then and what I said in both those prior situations is the same today, which is that you've got to communicate. You can't over communicate, because things get lost in, not in translation, but, tone matters and body language matters. And sometimes when you're
True,
doing emails, you're just shooting off an email and it comes off differently than it was meant to be.
true,
So the more that you can, again, together think about solutions, the better. This is not the time to sort of go off in our corners and put our heads in the sand. Now is a time to really step back in and really lean into those conversations with your partners, because it's the power of partnerships. This is what's going to get us through this.
true, true, true. And the thing is that today we live in such a fractured world, right? I mean,
Mm,
the one thing I learned early in my career is never write an email when you're angry,
yes.
because it's on record and you can't take it back, and it can cause a lot of hurt. And I learned that the hard way. And I once said that CC on a mail is like a weapon of mass destruction, because
Hmm.
in corporate life you tend to just CC everyone and their bosses, and you can create a lot of misunderstanding. And I
Yeah.
used to be a hothead early on in life, and I've realized with age and after having kids that you need to like take the gloves off, right? And just
Yeah, well, I
relax.
always remind people it's kind of what, stuff our moms told us, which is that, again, back in the day before email, if you're really angry about something, you can write it down, write a letter, and then never mail it,
And never mail it. True,
and, sleep on it overnight and then tear it up in the morning. And I
true,
think that's true. I think that is, I don't think, it serves any purpose. And I love Grover at Sesame Street, who always would say, you don't have to be disagreeable to disagree. And again, if you've achieved respect with your partners and an understanding, that is what will serve you. And getting angry and name calling and things like that, we're all frustrated, but it doesn't offer solutions. And that's when you just have to take a a pause and collect yourself, and then think through, because you're not going to have solutions if you're angry.
true, true. So, Maura, you talked about, being, you are an ambassador for the licensing business, but you talked about speaking with students, right, in colleges.
Yes.
Um, what's your elevator pitch for licensing, for joining the licensing business, or for licensing in particular, in general?
Uh, it's it's really interesting because it has evolved, but what's been so amazing is just to see how many students really understand the business of licensing. They may not know that it's called licensing and understand the nuances of the career opportunities, but they get that Taylor Swift is not making her own t-shirts, that Michael Jordan is not making those sneakers, that, Michael Kors is not doing the jewelry line or all the handbags. So it's it's really more of a show and tell than anything else. I mean, our pitch is that if you want a career opportunity where you are never bored, where you meet the best people, and you come up with some of the craziest ideas, licensing is the place for you.
Wow. And I can attest to that. I can certainly attest to that.
Yeah.
It's a fun ride. And the other one is I love collabs. I love
Yes.
great collabs,
Yes.
right?
We were just talking about those
And
earlier today. Yeah.
yeah, and I've seen some, of course, one of my clients that I worked with was Crocs, and they've done some great collabs with
They
Post
have.
Malone and,
Yes.
Pharrell and the works. And the product that they come out with
Oh,
just
just beautiful.
embodies the
Yeah.
the the collab. So it's not really just in name that you sign up an influencer and you put out the
Yeah.
same product, right? You
Hmm.
really got to think ground up. So if I were to ask you, what are some of the recent collabs that caught your eye?
Oh gosh.
Maybe two or three of them.
Um,
I know you posted about the Apple. Or,
Yes, I was gonna see that
yeah,
one I posted about me. That was kind of fun. I think I'm seeing some really fun, Kate Spade from a fashion perspective has done some really fun, fun collaborations with handbags and things like that, which I think looks really, I think that surprises and delights. And you just stop and say, hmm. I mean, I'm always though, I mean, some of the food collaborations, frankly, I'm like some of the ice cream combinations, some of the cereal combinations, a little strange.
little
But I
strange.
think I think for the most part, they're just meant to surprise and delight and
Yes,
have folks take a second look at things. I
yes.
think I'm just trying to think of some ones that really one that I just saw recently was MoMA with Nike. It was just beautiful, beautiful execution, really beautiful execution, um, which just looked great. But then, as I said, I was at the Sweets and Snack Show before Expo, and just some really fun, crazy food
Got it.
mashups, which is
Right.
just, I would never have thought of any of these, and I just love seeing those.
So, a recent collab that happened, which was kind of shepherded by Dream Theater, was between Mondelez and um, I think it was Pokemon, because uh,
Mhm.
the Oreo came out in a yellow flavor. I think you commented on that. You
Mhm.
made a point
Yep.
about it, and And it just so happened that Coldplay was in town, and
Mhm.
they put up a hoarding on the way to to the stadium, kind of doing a tribute to Yellow.
Uh-huh.
And it was very timely. It was very well executed, and of course, again, it really, the product shone through, and it didn't come across as a force fit. So
Mhm.
that was really nice. I think, I mean, even Viacom has done some great stuff in with jewelry, with Harry
Yes.
Potter, and they've it shouldn't I to my mind, as a consumer, it shouldn't be a force fit. It shouldn't be like, oh, these two brands had to kind of get together, and that's why they created this. So I think these, to my mind, really stood out. And again, what you were saying was right. It's Some of them are cringe, to use a Gen Z term, but other ones that stand out really catch your eye.
Yeah,
So, Maura, we're coming a little bit to the end. I have an Easter egg for you at the end, but
sure. Okay.
before I get into that, I wanted to ask you, how does Maura make time for a cup of chai at home with the
Oh,
family, with your
um,
schedule?
I I I think that's a challenge that all of us have in our industry, particularly when we love what we do. But I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten better about being a little more disciplined. But my family will tell you that I see everything is licensed, everything is licensing. So even when you're just sort of talking about something and having a cup of tea, cup of chai, you never stop thinking.
Yeah.
But I'm very,
Like,
I
this
am
is a
very lucky.
Lollapalooza mug. It's
Oh,
licensed
that's
to
cute.
So I really love it. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So
Love
it's
it.
got
Well,
Indian
I love it.
motifs on
I
it.
love elephants, so it's really,
Yeah.
um, but I think, like all of us, you do need to,
You will see your work everywhere, right? I mean, it creeps into personal life as well.
but I'm lucky. I've got a great family and great friends and I get to step away sometimes and do other things, which is fun.
True.
Um, so I'm lucky like that.
Great. Great. So as long as you're having enough chai, you're on
Well,
a good
yeah.
wicket.
I'm always, because I don't drink coffee. And so for me, that's all I ever drink. I just, I, I don't want to tell you how much I drink. I usually have giant teapots full and it just
Got
keeps
it.
going, which
Got
I
it.
love. But yeah, I think like all of us, I mean, how do you relax? You
Me,
know?
I like to go for long walks.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes, it's strange, but maybe it's age catching up. I don't know. I get lost in my own neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to use the GPS to figure out where I am,
Mm-hmm.
and then find my way back home. I will end up walking. Fortunately, I'm a water body. I'm an Aquarian.
Mm-hmm.
I live close to the beach. And I've also heard that when you walk on any natural surface, sand,
Mm-hmm.
grass, or barefoot, it kind of helps you,
It
de-stress.
reach, yes, it
Yeah.
recharge. Oh,
Recharge,
absolutely.
de-stress.
Yeah,
So I will head to the beach, remove my shoes, and walk on the sand.
it's the best,
I look
right?
very
Yeah.
strange, old bald man, middle-aged bald man, midlife crisis, walking with two
Mm-hmm.
shoes in his hands, but whatever, whatever
That's,
works.
yeah.
So Maura, just wanted to ask you in 60 seconds, right? Because I want to use this as a reel for the youngsters.
Mhm.
What's your best advice for budding entrepreneurs, male or female?
Uh, find out, well, I'm just thinking about if there's, find out who is even peripherally doing something that you're interested in and really start to follow them and read as much as you can about how they charted their course. I think that to me is really just a helpful way forward for folks. But I think for because from an entrepreneur's perspective, it's ideas are great, but you need to actually be able to figure out how to move it from a dream and hope to something that's actually happening. And I think when you look at other entrepreneurs, and even if they're not in the same industry, but what they went through, how did they get their
Correct.
start? How
Correct.
did they how did they take something from an idea to something that became this phenomena? And and how, but also to understand what that process was like, how many times they failed before they succeeded. And I think that's a huge lesson for all of us, regardless of what stage we're on, but particularly for budding entrepreneurs, rising professionals. I think identify folks out there that you admire and really understand their path and how they got there.
Lovely. Lovely. Now the Easter egg. So
Yes.
I have been, when I came up with this concept and I made a list of whom I wanted to interview, the
Mm-hmm.
first, I mean, the thing that vexed me a lot was how do I thank my guests? You know, um, a branded mug came to mind, a branded shirt came to mind, but then I need to know your size, color preference, all of that stuff. And if you're in New York, it's a bit, difficult to get it across to you. But I could ship it locally. I have done that. There's an e-commerce solution
Mm-hmm.
where you buy local and ship local, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of takes care of that. So there are solutions, but color preference, size, all of that. So then I started using my uh, lyrical skills to kind of try
Mm-hmm.
and create a personal tribute, a bespoke
Mm-hmm.
tribute for my guests.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm going to play for you. So
Oh, wow.
here
Okay.
goes. I need to share sound
I can't
as
wait.
advised by my wife. Um, and let me, okay, so share sound is done. Let me just go back to, just give me a sec, yeah? Uh,
Sure.
okay. It's called Maura Knows.
Just don't make me cry.
Maura knows, yes she knows. Maura knows, Maura knows.
Sure. Did you write this and sing it? Oh my goodness. That's
So
fantastic.
I have written out a poem about you, and
Mhm.
I have created a song for you.
Oh
So
my
I hope you
goodness.
like it when you listen to it. I'm sorry that
Yes,
you
thank
can't
you.
hear it. But thank you so much, Maura, for
No,
your
thank you, Sheldon. This has been so much fun. I
thank you
really
so
appreciate
much,
your,
and
no,
great
your
seeing you
interest.
after such a long time. Apologies for the random text. I am a random
No.
genius after all. And, really, it's been great. I mean, you were my boss's boss, my
Mhm.
super boss, as they say in corporate parlance.
Mhm.
But you've always been very courteous and very approachable.
Mhm. Oh,
We met
good.
at the licensing expo, the licensing fair when you were down, right? For
Mhm.
franchise, which was conducted by Franchise India, um, and of course, Marty is a gem
Mhm.
of a human being as well. I
He
interviewed him.
retired, Marty
I know he's
retired,
retired, yeah. Uh,
but we still
I,
see
I,
him. He's
I
great.
kind of, we were just having a chat, and I told Marty, I said, can I record the interview? And he was like kind enough to say, okay, go for it. And I had, my scrappy mic with me, and
Mhm.
I just love talking to people, So
And
it's.
people love talking to you.
Thank you so
You
much.
just, it's very, time can pass, and yet when you connect, it feels like no time has passed. So, and that's
Exactly.
a gift. That really is a gift that
Exactly.
you have.
Thank you so much.
No, thank
And
you.
I am always available for Licensing International. I've told you that
Oh, thank you.
before.
Thank you.
So anytime you need something done in India, there are limits to what I can do, but if you need if you need some help, I'm
Mhm.
just a call away. Uh,
Awesome. Thank you so
and
much.
I hope to keep I hope that this interview will sort of meet your standards.
Of
uh,
course.
and more
And
importantly, I think, I hope, it's been of some use to will be of some use to folks who are looking at the licensing business,
mhm.
even the folks who know about the licensing business but wanted to get some more perspective. uh,
Yeah.
that is the intention of doing Chai with the CEO. And because I've learned over the years, over the last 25 years being in the business, that the best clear speak comes from the top. right? Sometimes there's a lot of lost in translation
Mhm.
and Chinese whispers that happens, and you don't really get to the core of what the
Mhm.
management is
Mhm.
thinking. So that's why I thought I want to do this concept, and I want to do it. And if I don't get the right people, I'll wait. But I have
Yeah.
not put a target on my head to do 5 interviews a month or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm still looking for sponsors. So if any of you,
Mhm.
global brands want to
Mhm.
collab
Sure.
with me, I'm open to it. And
Right, right.
thank you for
No, thank you. We love
putting,
this and
yeah, for curating such lovely brands for us. We're the fans. I'm a fan
mhm.
first, and a big part of the business later. But uh,
Mhm.
please keep sending more brands to India. We love brands. We
Oh,
love
good,
Coldplay.
good.
We loved Ed Sheeran. We loved, we have great malls coming up. There's Geo World Drive.
Mhm.
Apple has set up one of the largest stores in Asia and India. So, things are changing. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
infrastructure. Um, I would say everything is a work in progress, right? And
Yes, yeah.
and sometimes patience pays off. So I'm extremely positive and optimistic about India.
Yeah. That's good. As am I. I would also want to mention that we, Licensing International offers scholarships to students who have an interest in licensing on a global basis. So we have
Oh,
given, there have been some recipients from India who have received scholarships. And so we really do encourage folks to check out our website. We have young professionals networking for rising professionals, but for students, we have uh, specifically set up scholarship funds on a global basis. Doesn't matter
lovely.
where you are.
And
Yeah.
is there an age limit to that?
No, you've got to be a student.
You definitely hope that students take advantage of it because
Yes.
Licensing International is a great organization to be associated
Oh,
with.
thank you. Thank you for that.
So
We got,
I would highly recommend it, and we will scroll your URL at the bottom so that everyone knows
yeah.
the website. And Maura, we're coming up on the hour. Thank you so much for your
No,
time.
thank
I'll let
you,
you get back
Sheldon.
to your
Really
day.
appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You
In
too. Have a great weekend.
Thank
Hopefully
you
it's the
so
start of
much.
your weekend. So
Yes,
enjoy.
yes. Thank you
Enjoy
so
your
much.
walk on the beach with your shoes in your hand.
With my shoes in my hand.
There you go. All right.
Take care, Maura.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care. Stay
Take care.
well. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
You are listening to Chai with the CEO, a Random Genius Media original.